Oh God, 2 floors left. How could I forget about them? I mean, I staged all the bodies at the door until I was done cleaning, and then dragged them out into the yard to the dumpster, and it was pitch black outside already. No moon to be seen. I knew I was just making excuses for being distracted, losing my focus. The fact was, I had to clean the whole house. So it's good I caught my F up before I called somebody to come get me. I stomped around the dark building, searching the ceiling for any signs of egress. My head-mounted flashlight, though dimmer than before, was still working. The many green glow sticks spread across the floor gave off a haunted house or sci-fi vibe. The least strange layout of the building made it easy to search. Only 2 rooms and a hallway running down the middle. I had cleared the left's room and the hallway when I finally found what I was looking for. At the very back of the right room was what appeared to be a circular hole, just wide enough for me to squeeze through if I sucked in. But first I had to get up to it. I pulled over the giant table the poor red-headed girl had been killed on and stacked a chair on top of it. Slowly, on shaken footing, I stood atop the chair and descended towards the hole in the ceiling. I turned on my mag light and laid it by the lip of the hole as my head and torso made it through the opening. My head-mounted light showing me nothing but old boxes and the fog of floating dust. I could pull myself the rest of the way up easily from where I was. I grabbed the ledge of the opening and immediately touched something warm and wet. I looked at my hand to see what I had already suspected. It was fresh blood, but not a lot of it. I could see the spattering trail of it running up the boxes, some having been knocked over. Well, shit. I hoped whoever the blood belonged to was already dead and not some half-crazed, badly dressed cannibal hiding in wait for me. A brief struggle and I heaved myself from floor 1 to floor 2. I picked up my mag light, holding it cocked back ready to strike, and was glad for my corona mask helping blocking out most of the dust. From what I could see, the second floor was just one large room, like a loft. The high ceiling revealed that there was never a 3rd floor to begin with. The boxes were tightly packed together, filled with old clothes and assorted garbage you might find at your local thrift store. The wall at the front of the house had 4 windows, 2 windows 4 feet up and another 2 windows 4 feet above them, giving the impression of 3 floors from the outside of the building. No moonlight in through the windows, leaving my visibility low and claustrophobic. It was like the house was built to look normal from the outside, but whoever built it dropped the facade when designing the inside. I slowly followed the blood trail, scooting boxes out of my way as I did. It seemed there was a lot more blood at the beginning of the trail and less as I followed. My amateur CSI skills had no idea what that meant. I turned a corner and almost jumped out of my skin as my light illuminated a pale face peering at me from between 2 boxes. Fright gripped my body as I realized whoever I was tracking was alive. My brain finally kicked in and I recognized it was the face of a child. A scared child. Her brown eyes stared at me as I stared right back in silence. Both of us were frozen like deer in headlights, studying each other's expressions. She's young, teenager maybe, with pale skin, freckles like a band-aid across her nose and cheeks, and reddish auburn hair. She reminded me of the dead girl on the table. Hell, she could have been the dead girl's kid sister. I recognized the look of fear on her face and realized I was the scary one in this situation. This girl is probably hiding from whatever hell happened downstairs, and then my ass comes stomping around in the dark, following her blood trail and shining a blinding light in her eyes. I pulled down my mask and put on the best comforting smile I could muster. I reach up slowly to click off my headlamp and point the mag light at the ground between us so she could see my face. "Hi, I'm not with them." I point down at the ground awkwardly and try to smile harder. I don't know anything about what happened down there, and I don't care either. I'm just here to clean up the mess and bounce. I'm just looking for bodies, not alive people." She stared at me, unblinking. "I'm not going to hurt you, is what I mean," I spit out, realizing I'm doing a terrible job at not sounding creepy. She did blink at this, and I saw her expression soften. But then she winced in pain and stumbled forward, knocking one of the boxes over. "Oh shit, you okay?" I ask as I finally catch a good look of her without the boxes blocking her. I see her holding a towel tightly to her side, soaking up dark blood. She's not okay. Shit. What should I do? Do I help her? Do I call the boss? I don't deal with the living. Shit. She is just a kid. I can't let her bleed out. What if I call this in and they want me to snuff her? Or send some goon to come do it instead of me? I don't want to be responsible for killing a kid. But if I do nothing, she'll probably die of blood loss. How much blood do you need to lose before you pass out? My mind raced through millions of inner thoughts and dialogue. My brain was shooting questions and scenarios back and forth to itself like a lively debate. I'm not good with people, or situations like this. It's why I prefer the dead. I decided to start small. "How did you get here?" I asked. I lowered myself down to one knee to appear less threatening, like the cops always do with kids on TV. "With my sister," she said slowly in an accent I've never heard before. Maybe English wasn't her first language. Sudden realization hit me and I felt sadness like I had never felt before on a job. It was her sister that was tied, stabbed, and chewed on downstairs. The bodies I would come across never felt this personal. I could always disconnect from what happened to them. This was the first time it had a personal context to a victim. "Were you taken here by the bad people downstairs?" I asked. "No," she said, nodding her head up and down, sending me some mixed signals. Maybe it was from the shock or just different customs from wherever she was from. "No, the men came and killed my friends. Sister pushed me up here to hide. Is she still down there?" No," I stuttered, thoroughly confused by what she had told me. Was this girl friends with the badly dressed cannibals? Or were the camo guys the actual cannibals? So the camo guys busted in this house and killed everybody and ate on the legs of her sister? But the camo guys didn't have blood around their mouths. Maybe they were bloody under the masks. The forensics told a very different story, but like I've said, I'm no expert. The girl winced in pain again and swayed like she was about to pass out. She gripped the bundled clothes tighter to her side, blood running down her pants now. "How bad are you hurt?" I asked with genuine concern. "One of the men fired a gun that shot little bullets everywhere. Some of the tiny bullets hit my side before I got up here. It's not that bad, though. I think it's getting better." "Getting better?" I scoffed. You just don't get better from gunshot wounds. Let me see your injury. I swear I'm not here to hurt you." The girl scowled at me and ducked down defensively as I reached out. I knew I had overstepped my bounds and felt like she would snap off one of my fingers like a stray dog if I pushed further. I jumped out of my skin at the sound of a tremendous bang from downstairs, followed by the sound of heavy footsteps.
"Cleaner, are you in here?"
came a man's bellowing voice. The girl ran back behind another set of stacked boxes.
"Don't let him get me,"
she whispered harshly.
"He was one of the men who hurt me."
"Whoa, whoa," I said, patting the air. "My job is to clean, not to be a narc." I could see she didn't get what I was saying, so I reiterated. "I won't tell him shit." She smiled slightly at this, but whipped off her face when another angry yell from downstairs echoed up to us.
"If you are in here, show yourself. I might have to burn this damn house down. I wouldn't want to kill one of Mr. Elliott's employees."
"Hey, yeah, okay, I'm coming down now," I yelled back. Before I turned back towards the hole, I thought of something. I spun back to face the girl and rolled the maglite to her. "That's company property, so I'll need it back," I joked, with what I hoped was a calming demeanor. When I was standing over the hole, I could see the moving shadow of someone pacing back and forth, waiting on me in the glow of the green light. I lowered myself back down to the unsteady chair of the table and then down to solid ground.
"My name is Sir Thaddeus Freeman,"
said a broad-shouldered man carrying a long silver knife in his left hand. He had a meticulously groomed salt and pepper goatee, balding with silver hair around his ears. His face was withered and wrinkled like old leather, but his eyes held an ice-blue clarity.
"I'm afraid that I have called upon your services too soon," he continued. "It was the fault of one of my protégés. It is not common for us hunters to leave a job unfinished."
So he is the client. This Sean Connery-looking dude called me in to clean up his mess. I stared at him. I noticed his strange attire. Black vest over a white-collared shirt. Baggy black BDU pants with a big revolver on his left hip. I realized his black vest was wet, with red blood staining his white undershirt. "Good to meet you, Mr. Freeman."
"Sir Freeman,"
he corrected sharply. "My apologies, Sir Freeman. I usually never met the clients on the job. Is there anything I can help you with?" I bullshitted, hoping my forced politeness was convincing.
"Yes, I do," he interjected sternly. "Have you seen anyone else around the property? A young girl, perhaps?"
"Yes, I have," I responded cheerfully. I turned to point at the table. "There was a dead red-headed girl on the table when I arrived. She's outside on top of the pile if you—"
"No, a living girl. She'll be very similar in appearance to the poor lass on the table. This she-beast is a smart one. She takes the appearance close to what the intended prey looks like," he said. Then he looked down and began talking in a way that sounded like he was mostly talking to himself. "She must be old enough to discern how humans think on a basic level. She has picked up on little things, like looking similar to the targeted human. Also, the monster can get close so the human lets their guard down."
"All I've seen are the recently deceased that were spread all over the building," I said. Sir Freeman looked back at me with a doubting expression, so I tried to change the subject. "You're bleeding," I pointed at his blood-stained shirt and vest. "Do you need help? I think I have bandages outside with the supplies."
"Look here, boy,"
the man said, stepping forward with a wince of pain, sticking his finger hard into my chest.
"This thing is not human. The bitch is a liar. Her and her pack have been killing unsuspecting humans like that poor young redhead for centuries. They stalk and study their prey for months. They take the form of a human for one night a year to feed on man's flesh and lengthen their horrid lifespans."
I stepped back from the man's angry tirade when spittle from his mouth sprinkled my face mask. I don't believe it was on purpose, so I didn't deck the old-timer immediately, but I sure as hell wasn't going to remain in spitting distance of him. Besides, he had a knife, a gun, and was a client. Okay, I understand," I said, patting the air in a calming gesture for the second time during the night.
I'll keep an eye out, but I'm almost through here anyway, Sir Freeman. Don't lie to me, boy. I tell you, monsters exist, and you blew it off like I'm some crazy old-timer. You don't even believe me, do you? He finished, his sharp blue eyes cutting into me. I've seen some weird stuff since starting this job, so maybe monsters are real. What matters is you believe it's real, and you're paying the client. I responded, feeling good about fooling the crazy old-timer. Of course he was crazy. The worst part about this old man's story was he wasn't even getting his monsters right. I guess he was trying to describe werewolves, but werewolves turn into wolves on full moons, not from monsters into humans, and there was no full moon outside tonight anyways. I don't know what was going on, but I had done my good Christian deed already. I gave the kid upstairs a flashlight and lied for her. Now I needed to get the hell away from this guy. They have to eat on this night or they die. Their life force leaves them, Sir Freeman told me with bug eyes. My hunters and I stopped them before their leader could consume the girl, and you placed all the bodies outside, but she is still around and daybreak is within an hour. She will be coming back. Unfortunately, I have to get to another job, so I lied politely as I backed away from him. I'll give you 5,000 American dollars to wait with me another hour. You just have to watch the bodies until they are picked up. I'll lay in wait inside if she shows herself. Will you take this deal? Yes, sir, Sir Freeman. I can push back my other job a little, I quickly answered. This guy was obviously crazy, but I'm not crazy enough to turn down that type of cash. Good. Just stay out front. You might see my squire Jacob traipsing about in the woods. Don't mind him. Squire? What the hell? These guys are cosplaying King Arthur and Supernatural? I was about to turn around and head outside when he asked me one more question. Did you check the top floors completely? Yes, I said, turning back to face him with my fake pleasant voice. There's only one more floor, actually. This house has some crazy architecture. I watched the man turn and limp towards the table, looking up at the hole in the ceiling. It's a farce, just like them. He turned his head to eyeball me. Just like the creatures themselves. Normal looking on the outside, but corrupted and hollow on the inside. They lured that poor girl in here. If only we weren't too late to save her. Okay, well, I'm gonna stand outside now, I said as I once again tried to break away from the conversation. Wait! The old man said alarmingly. He jumped on the table with uncanny dexterity and reached up to touch the edge of the hole. Fresh blood, he stated as he dipped his fingers in the blood from the girl upstairs. Oh, that? I scrambled in my brain for something. I looked down at the girl's fresh blood on my hands. I cut my hand on something while climbing, I finished, feeling proud of myself as I quickly flashed the palm of my hand to the man. That was a mistake. The squirrely old goat must have eyes like a hawk, because he immediately jumped down from the table and rushed me. He snatched my hand and flipped my palm around to inspect. Bullshit, he growled. No cut, not your blood. Mr. Freeman, sir, the old-timer interrupted by delivering a devastating punch to my stomach, knocking the wind out of me and collapsing me on the ground. He then turned to race up the table and chair, silver knife in one hand, gun in the other. He disappeared up through the hole as I sucked in air and tried to stand. I could hear his thundering footsteps as the ceiling cracked and bulged above me. There you are, she-bitch, I heard him yell, followed by one loud gunshot. The girl screamed, and there was stomping about like a fight was happening. She continued to scream as the tumultuous footsteps traveled around above me. But then he began to scream, and I heard the distinct sound of metal hitting something hard. The floor busted out above me, and 2 legs fell through. I rolled out of the way as the immense sound of further cracking followed. No! You're not getting away again! Sir Freeman screamed right before the bottom fell out of the second floor and 2 figures fell together to collide into the ground in a cloud of dust and wood fragments. I could barely tell what was happening.
with only the green glow of glow sticks illuminating all the upturned dust. The dust started to clear, and I could see Sir Freeman on his back with the poor girl in a bear hug. She screamed in pain and scratched at his face weakly. She turned her head to spot me, her eyes wide and mouth open in a desperate plea.
Help! Help!
Sir Freeman grunted and hugged her tighter, causing her to let out her air in a disgusting croak. He rolled them over so he ended up on top of her, pinning her to the ground with his hand around her neck.
I should have known a gunshot wouldn't take you down. I have to use silver on the Alpha,
he yelled into her face as he put the tip of the silver knife right to her solar plex. Just like the other redhead was killed. Just like her sister. That's all the evidence I needed to keep a crazy old man from gutting a defenseless girl in front of me. I ran up behind him and snatched his revolver from its loose-fitting holster and jammed the barrel end into the nape of his neck.
Get off the girl, psycho!
I demanded, my voice shaking with rage and fear.
Stupid boy! She isn't human! She is almost out of time before she changes back. I have to kill her while she is in this weakened state.
Sir Freeman yelled back at me without turning. I had figured he was going to argue with me or test my mettle, so I whacked him pretty good across the side of his head with the long barrel of the gun. To the old bastard's credit, he barely flinched as blood began pouring down his face.
I bet no one else knows you're here, right? I'll just wrap you up with the rest of your sicko dead friends outside,
I screamed, hoping he took the bluff. I didn't know if I could kill a dude execution style.
Okay,
Sir Freeman said. He slowly moved the knife away from the girl's belly and held it out to the side, placing it on the ground out of the girl's reach. He shifted his weight to pin the girl down by straddling her and held both hands up. He was making me sick.
You're a businessman, right?
He said in a much calmer tone.
I know this is a lot to take in, but in a short while, the creature's bodies outside will revert to their animal form, and I will be justified. But I have to kill her before she returns to normal. I will pay you an additional $200,000 American to stand down. I swear I'm the good guy here.
Before I could reject his offer, the girl lunged up swiftly to chomp her teeth right on his nose. Of course, he screamed and pushed her back down with all his force. He pulled away from her and held the place where his nose used to be. I jumped back, screaming along with the noseless man, but without a wasted moment, the girl reached out for the knife on the floor beside her. He was distracted enough for her to pull away to and snatch the knife, quickly whipping it back between them and thrusting the entire blade up into Sir Freeman's throat and up into his skull. A fountain of blood erupted out of the stab wound when he pulled the blade out. Sir Freeman's hands dropped, and he began to topple, but the girl had scrambled out from under him and caught him. She opened her mouth and put it to the bloody geyser of the wound. She hugged him tight as she sucked out the blood like a greedy leech. What the f? I stammered as I backed away from the horrible scene. The girl was now hungrily biting off chunks of flesh from the dead man's neck, swallowing and eating, swallowing and eating. At first, I thought it was my inner monologue screaming in my head when I heard the voice behind me.
Oh God, no! It can't be! Sir Freeman!
I turned to see some white guy with a high and tight haircut, wearing all camo and black face paint under his eyes. He charged at me. I realized this must be the squire Sir Freeman mentioned earlier. I also realized too late that I appeared rather sus spinning around with a gun in my hand. The squire leveled a yellow gun at me, and with a pop, I felt the power of a city's electrical grid flow through me. All my muscles tensed up and I toppled over to smack my head on the ground. The asshole that tased me discarded the weapon and ran past me. It felt like an eternity, but the taser ran its cycle and finally released me from its hellish grasp. I shakily pulled the probes out of my chest and rolled over to see what was happening. The girl must have retreated into the hallway through one of the awkwardly placed doors, because Squire Boy was bending down over his dead companion.
"I'll finish it, Master. I'll finish the hunt,"
he said melodramatically before darting off into the hallway with the silver knife in his hand. I lay there, wondering what I should do. I thought of bouncing while the guy was distracted. I didn't have to defend the tiny cannibal girl any longer. She could handle herself. But would I get fired for not cleaning up the extra dead body? Was it like abandoning a job site? I was actually more afraid of getting on Mr. Elliot's bad side. A shriek, similar to a woman but incredibly primal and loud, pierced through the house. I heard the man scream in panic.
"Oh God, no! I had more time!
The squire came running back in the room and looked at me terrified. His right hand was torn to ribbons and bleeding. The silver knife was nowhere to be seen. He was jumping up and down like a scared kid as he pointed at the gun in my hand.
"You have to help me! Shoot it, or it will kill us both!"
A giant ball of fur and muscle flew into the room and smashed into the man. It was a freaking cat. A big one with pointed ears and a long tan body. It was a mountain lion. The cougar's mouth engulfed the man's face and bit down, shaking him about like a chew toy as the giant animal stood over him. I watched the screaming man be shook violently, blood running from his face to be smeared like a paintbrush on the ground till his neck cracked and he whimpered to silence. I thought about how this was a very ineffective way to kill somebody, almost like the big cat chose to cause as much pain as possible before the man died. When it finally turned its giant bloody face to look at me, I realized how stupid I had been for not running. I was too entranced or in shock with the brutality in front of me. Now I had no chance in outrunning this thing. It began stalking towards me on its padded feet. I wasn't going to go down without a fight, so I scrambled to my feet and raised my gun. The damn cat was so fast, clearing the gap between us in a microsecond and slapping the gun out of my hand to sling it against the wall. I cried out and half expected to see my hand in tatters, like the squire's hand had been. But it was still intact, just throbbing from the force of the hit. The cougar, only a foot from me, let out a low growl as it sat on its hind legs. It got up, let out that awful woman-like scream, and sat down again quickly, only to do the stand-up sit-down motion again. I'm not stupid. I promptly sat down on my ass, now face level with the killer animal. Its feline eyes studied me, and its hot, rancid breath invaded my nostrils through my mask. The cat, satisfied somehow, turned away from me and looked up into the big hole that had just been created in the ceiling. With feline grace, it launched itself silently up into the darkness of the second floor. I waited, wondering if I should try to run now. The thing was so fast, though. Was it just playing with me like a house cat plays with a caught mouse? After a few moments, the cat returned, plopping down gracefully in front of me, a black maglite in its bloody mouth. "No way," I said with incredulity, as the cougar walked up to me, dropped the light. It stared at me a moment long before promptly turning around to sprint out of the room in a flash. I heard the front door get bashed open as it left the house. I just sat there dumbstruck. After a good 10 minutes of sitting and digesting what had happened, I was fairly confident the little girl/cougar monster wasn't coming back for me. I walked out the front door, into the bright rays of a dawning sun to burn my sensitive eyes. I took the phone out of my pocket and speed dialed number 1. Mr. Elliot answered after 2 rings.
"Is it done?"
The boss's voice cut right to the chase.
"You were supposed to call me when you arrived."
"Yes, I'm sorry, Mr. Elliot. It won't happen again. It's been a hell of a night. Unforeseen variables got in the way of me finishing on schedule," I explained. There was a pause on the other end before the boss answered.
"Do you need more time?"
was all he asked. "Yes, Mr. Elliot. And maybe one more thing."
What is that?
We need to discuss hazard pay.